Live from the Subaru of Gwinnett studio, CAB Incorporated presents Celebrating Powerhouse Women. Now, here's your host, Amanda Pierce.
Good morning and welcome back to another exciting episode of Celebrating Powerhouse Women, the series that salutes and recognizes women who are making an impact in our community. Today is a very special day as we are headed into the holiday season. I am thrilled to welcome Pat Royak here on the show today. Good morning, Pat.
Good morning. Delighted to be here. Thanks for having me on this chilly morning.
It is. It's so cold out there.
Yes.
Well, for our listeners out there that might not know Pat from social media or any of the wonderful things that she does, she is the CEO of Royak Consulting, and I will allow her to give us a little bit of information about what she does with Royak. Please.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I've globe-trotted around the globe, and our consulting firm really helps businesses take a look at their platform from an omni-channel perspective. A lot of, particularly during the pandemic, retailers pivoted to sell products online. You've got to pay close attention to your brand story and your strategy, ensuring that your business model and how you show up, whether it's an Instagram where a consumer's purchasing or looking at what your products look like online, it's really important that it's cohesive, authentic, and really represents who you are and what the consumers are looking for. So it's been exciting and very interesting during the pandemic.
I'm sure. And you use that word omni-channel, and I underlined it here. Obviously, being familiar with the prefix and the suffix, elaborate what you mean specifically by omni-channel strategies. They're being fed from multiple different directions?
Yeah, no, excellent question. Basically, the consumer needs to have a seamless experience. So if you buy a product, you might research it online. Then you'll go into the store. Well, you're going to expect to see the brand, the business, and the product categories that are very familiar to what you saw online. Otherwise, you might think you're in the wrong store. Oh. So a lot of stores and businesses started as retailers, and then to have that personality show up online, so you know who they are, a consistent logo, the culture of the company, the service that's being offered, the expectation around price and quality and selection. And you can't look different. For example, a lot of people want to pick up the phone nowadays, particularly during the pandemic, and hear a real voice. Mm-hmm. Well, your customer service needs to be responsive to that and aware of the products that are in the store and the products online, so that they can pivot from one place to another. You might research online, have your mobile device, and check it out as you're headed in, checking prices competitively, and then you ultimately end up purchasing it, maybe on Instagram after you chatted with your friends or family about, hey, what do you think about this? How does it look? Okay, I'll buy it. You know, young people today, they take pictures of themselves in the dressing room, post it, send it to their friends. What do you think? So it's created a complexity because a lot of computer systems and foundations of companies were built with retail in mind, right. And now to be able to operate on lots of different devices and show up exactly the same, it's really important to ensure you're competitive and you're really delighting the consumers whose needs and desires are constantly changing.
And making sure, like you said, that message is aligned so there's no confusion with the consumer having to go from the brick and mortar and translate that to maybe their device or something like that.
That's exactly right.
Very cool. Thank you, Pat, for elaborating. And now that you said that, I kind of feel silly because it makes total sense. I was thinking of something totally different. I apologize. I was so excited to get into our conversation. I failed to recognize our presenting sponsor for this series, and it would not be possible without Terry Jondal and CAB Incorporated. And since 1982, CAB Incorporated has been a distinguished leader in manufacturing and global sourcing, serving a variety of industries, including infrastructure, hydraulics, automotive, and rail, with their precision machined iron and steel products. As a woman-owned company, CAB is proud to be the presenting sponsor of the Celebrating Powerhouse Women series. Terry is actually a dear friend of Lisa, and Lisa is who connected us. One of my favorite things about this show is just the network of powerhouse women that I get to meet and to see it grow as each guest comes on. So we did want to give a shout out to Terry and Lisa because they too have sat in that powerhouse seat where you are today. Let's kind of take it back. We'll hop in our DeLorean, as I like to say, Pat, and let's take it back to Washington where everything started. And I'll let you kind of lead from there.
Yes, I was born and raised in Washington, D.C. I meet people and they're like, wow, you're a real Washingtonian? Can I touch you? There aren't many of us. But yes, grew up in an Italian-Irish household. Brothers and sisters. My father was an insurance salesman, so he was always dressed to the nines, going out and always coming home for dinner and then back out to see his clients in the evening. And my grandmother was in retail, and her father was a tailor. So it kind of started the whole passion that I had for the fashion industry with a fashion show in my basement, I think at the ripe old age of 10, which is kind of funny. And then worked retail through high school. And ended up with great mentors and people from Levi Strauss coming into the retail store where I worked. And long story short, ended up working for Levi's for the first several decades of my career, which was pretty amazing.
Yes.
And
I remember my favorite pair of Levi's.
Oh,
and
you
I
do?
wore
Which
them
one?
until they had, were they 512s? Was that the number? 512. And I wore them until they had little holes where the pockets were in the rear end. You know, my mom had to say, no more, lady, you can't wear those. But Levi's, they just fit like a glove. Everybody had Levi's when I was in school.
Well, that's so ironic that you said 512 because that's one of the products that I actually worked on.
What?
And we didn't even talk about this.
Oh, my goodness.
Unless you remember it from
No.
my CV. That's
It's totally
crazy.
ironic.
So 512 was started when I was a sales manager in New York, and my Long Island sales reps were saying, it was during that hip-hop era, we need something, a skinny jean.
Yep.
And you probably were very trim, I can imagine.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. And I'll never forget. Bleached jeans, skinny.
Those whitewash look.
Exactly. And that's, the C with a collaborative with a capital C. I think it's the first time I learned that by speaking up, even as a young woman and a young leader in a company, and listening to my team and them listening to their customers, that there was a need that was kind of a counterintuitive and a zig and zag from where the market was going.
Right.
But we built a great business because there were a lot of Hispanics and Asians moving into New York City, and their body builds were just smaller people in general. So for a lot of reasons, it became a great product for the company at the time.
And a staple in pretty much everyone's closet. Those jeans lasted forever.
Yes.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, they lasted forever. They don't make jeans these days anymore. You go to Old Navy and it's that weird stretchy material and it doesn't withstand years. I would be remiss if we didn't inform our listeners, because we kind of leapt forward into your success within the fashion industry. Close that gap really quickly and just tell everybody out there what a profound impact you've had in the world of fashion, and kind of give a little bit of tidbits on some of the things that you've had a hand in creating and have launched into success.
So transitioning, one of the exciting things I did was I led a business in New Zealand as a general manager, first time to really lead manufacturing. And I think that's where you started, obviously, with Lisa and our sponsor's voice. I think when you really understand how product gets made and have to fill a factory and also lead the sales and marketing and create the culture of the company, it's an amazing experience, and having a team in New Zealand that really enabled me to, for the first time, lead all the different functions. And we basically were number one in the world, which is crazy. Wow. New Zealand's the bottom of the world, but we had the highest brand share. And the team was quite innovative, and Levi's used it as a little incubator to test new programs and products and even infrastructure systems. So it was fabulous. And that led me to Asia later to lead a supply chain project for Levi's. And I think that's when I really learned about culture and diversity, and how there are different people and different opinions and different ways of working. They're introverts and they're extroverts, and some people are great at technologies, others are really great at product. And we reinvented the supply chain kind of with the end in mind, working backwards, and narrowed the supply chain so that we created $10 million in savings. At the time, everything had been decentralized, so we centralized it.
Right.
We pulled it together. And then later kind of looked at the brand itself and the brand story and needed to update and modernize it as consumers were starting to buy lots of different products.
This is still with Levi's,
This
correct?
is still with
Okay.
Levi's, and this still is in Asia. And then from there, I ended up joining Liz Claiborne, and with totally different experience, portfolio of brands, and worked for amazing people like Angela Ahrendts and Paul Sharon, who really had a strategy of building, buying it, and renting brands. So understanding the culture of Lucky Brand when we bought them, or a Juicy Couture, and then licensed Donna Karan business. I learned how to build teams and position products in different markets for different consumers. Not all brands are made the same.
Right.
The other thing I learned is about portfolio strategy. In different markets, some products are going to do really well. We're going to be we're in a casual marketplace now where everybody wants casual, but soon people are going to be stepping out, going back to work. We've talked about women in the workplace. 20% of them have left the workplace. They're going to have to go back and get new outfits.
Yep.
And those are the things I learned at Liz Claiborne. And then later ended up joining Maidenform in the intimates business, kind of back in New York, and had the opportunity to build that business with Maidenform and Donna Karan around the globe. Spent a lot of time in Ireland. We had our business there. And after that, that's how I ended up in Georgia, was with Morena Group. Morena Group makes medical grade compression. So I sort of went from underwear to medical underwear, if you will. And a company, private equity, identified me, part of my consulting firm at the time that had grown throughout the years. I've sometimes called myself the accidental consultant because I've done it in between my corporate roles, which has been a lot of fun because that way you're very authentic and really part of their company. So it's a more of a boutique agency is what I have, and immersing myself into the team. And then that's how I got here in Georgia and met wonderful people like Lisa. And the Next Generation Manufacturing Group, and having mentors who are friends who can really help you get to know the local politics, the organizations to join. I joined one called Kettering, which is fabulous. And they have been wonderful to host all kinds of events in partnership with people like the Chamber of Commerce and learn about international business. Georgia does business with the world, and particularly key partners like Mexico, where I spent a lot of my career and time, building businesses there, as well as Asia and Europe.
Wow. That was so much.
Sorry, so much.
Oh no, I'm so excited, and I have so many questions that I want to ask you. But being respectful of how much time we have, I do want to mention one thing because I read it, and it's about the Maidenform. That I think the material that you used was something that was similar to a cyclist shorts or something.
Sure.
How did you develop? Did you help develop the technology for that product as far as the material was concerned? And if so, how did you discover this? Was it all trial and error? Like, what is that process like?
So the company you're referring to is actually Morena Group.
Morena Group.
Yes, and that's the company that I joined when I came here to Atlanta. And basically, it's called medical grade compression. It's a fabric that was worked on with the founder. He was and his wife were Olympian cyclists, and he basically hurt his knee, and the fabric was born out of a compression garment that they created. And the difference with compression is actually it stimulates your lymphatic system. So you can have it in underwear for NASA astronauts to go out of this world. You can have it in a breast cancer bra for a woman who's healing from surgery. And a lot of people do triathlons, so you can wear compression grade fabric that really helps you swim, run, bike, play, much faster than your average compression out there.
Or like the socks that we were talking about earlier.
Yes,
compression socks.
Yes, we were talking about your early experience in the
compression world.
Compression world, yes. And it was interesting because during that time, and I think this is what a lot of businesses are looking at right now, is what is your brand story? And how can you tell it? Even after 25 years, which Morena had been around, it was purchased by private equity, and they wanted to, take it to the next level. So we really had a blast going direct to consumer and kind of doing the omni-channel, but only in a medical format, updating the B2B so we could have better relationships with hospitals and retail type plastic surgery clinics, one called Sonabella. And then we also ended up going direct to consumer, creating millions of dollars in new business, which I was very proud to see during the pandemic. They came out with masks. masks and garments to really help, as many businesses have. So I think really setting up a business to be resilient, no matter what the consumer needs are, to really pivot and be able to expand globally. And had an amazing team there, really an amazing team.
Well, you look like you lead with fortitude, and you mentioned the word million, and I'm laughing because I was reading your bio earlier, and the amount of money that you make company is in the millions. You make millions for company. I think the reference that I saw was 4 to 40 million that you helped generate, and I was like, whoa. So I think it's safe to say that you have a knack for success. Something that you mentioned was, what is your brand story? And I know that brand development, international, and so on and so forth is one of your fortes. What about your brand? In finding other people's brands and in helping them find their brands or their identity, how are you able to establish so clearly your brand and your path and your mission for Royak Consulting?
It's a really good question, and I think it has a lot to do with, who you are as a person and family values. My husband and I, years ago, actually when we were living in Asia, we came up with our own family brand, mission, story, and maybe it all started back then about the kind of life we wanted to lead, living overseas and having a young son. And I think you just have to be authentic to who you are, and for me, it's kind of family first and giving back to the community, and then building a business and an organization that represents what you're good at, and not be afraid to say when you have made a mistake and learn from your mistakes. So I would say that my business is really about lessons learned and applying all the things I've learned over my career, whether it was the dot-com era when that busted, or 2008 with the financial crisis and the crash, and then now with the pandemic, is offering, my experience and support. It can be incubators, which lately I've been quite involved with my university, Salisbury University, that does a Shark Tank-like competition, and actually is a feeder group for Shark Tank. And that has led me to think about collaborating locally with other consulting firms, actually here in Atlanta. That I think during the pandemic, we all stood back and said, what are we going to do different? And that's kind of what I'm doing different. I've stepped out, and there's a new incubator I've joined as a collaborative consultant. And we're doing something with Kaizen Analytics, which is kind of dynamic pricing, if you will. I think people are going to want to make sure you're making the most in your margins. So there's kind of a tactical example of some of the work I might do. And then strategically, really helping the authentic story. Like I went back and talked about the Morena Group and the fact that I think there was kind of buried in the years of business, the fact that an Olympic cyclist actually was some of the motivation for the brand. And
that's a fantastic selling point.
And going back to thinking about, wow, if you could take this fabric to the moon, why would you not?
Right.
And sometimes founders and individuals who have been doing business for years, they don't recognize the things that somebody from the outside coming in can offer. So I'm hoping all businesses, particularly entrepreneurs who are struggling now, reach out, if it's not me but others, and get a different perspective on your business and your brand story, and being very authentic. Consumers are looking for products that give back to the community, that are sustainable, and you can't just do it as a last resort. If you can build it as part of your purpose, your business, and your brand, those are the questions and the things that I like to work on, the story and the strategy, and then what is the business model that's really going to drive that and ensure that it's delivering the sustaining profits. I mean, it doesn't happen by accident that you get those millions of dollars. And actually, you have to say no. You have to stop doing things. You have to look at your top 20 best-selling products and kill your losers. And it's so hard because everybody designs a product and they think they're all beautiful. But I think my teams have had the courageous and being courage to say, no, we're not going to do any more of that. And accentuate what you're good at. A lot of people, I've always been blessed with mentors who understand what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and then surrounding me and helping me find and build a team that was complementary and diverse. And by doing that, you find that you can sell more products because everybody sitting around your meeting table has different minds and different perspectives. And that's like gold dust to more money being developed in your products and services.
Wow. You said two things that stood out to me: diverse and perspective. And I think that you share some of the same core values as one of our partners at McCarthy Building Companies. McCarthy Building Companies is a community-based general contractor specializing in healthcare, education, aviation, and commercial construction projects. They are committed to helping their clients achieve their short and long-term strategic goals. The McCarthy Partnership for Women believes that diverse perspectives drive better outcomes, and that's why they're thrilled to support this series. You mentioned here on some of our sheets that we're going back and forth on, specifically diversity and perspective, and then also how that translates into what you do. You mentioned it with your teams and building teams. Talk a little bit about the importance of establishing a team where diversity exists in order to help better fuel all the things that you want to achieve.
Yeah, I think it's critical. I've worked in brands, mostly women's brands, in the latter part of my career. And in the beginning part of my career, I was with Levi's and designing and developing, obviously, men's clothing. And when I think of fast forwarding to today, if you can have people who are, let's say, engineer and IT people, and they tend to listen very well. They may not be the talkers in the room like the sales and marketing personalities. I actually live in a household with two, I hate to say, but we're more introverted, my husband and my son. And, I've read books like, A World That Won't Stop Talking, because you really need people of different experiences. And what I find with those who take the time to listen and process information a little bit longer and different, you get very clear and concise findings. You will have different facts come out, and they will see things that others don't. I'm very visual. I'm very intuitive, and I'm very spontaneous. I like to surround myself with people who are, the opposite of what I am. Creating my own consulting company, I need to kind of be right and left brain, which fortunately in all those tests, I get Strength Finder. We've all done things like
ENFJ.
that. Yes. So I'm an extrovert, but it's really important that through the interview process, that you have a wide variety of people interview the team, that you recognize that today, the new generation coming out, there's different ways they communicate. They may not be as grammar savvy with all the texting that goes on. And abbreviations, exactly. So I think it's really key to have a diverse age group. Race, ethnicity, religion, all of it. And I was just blessed to grow up in Washington, D.C., a very diverse area in a diverse neighborhood, have a global career where I lived in Asia and Europe, needing to understand different social norms, my son going to a British school, a culture, understanding that for a birthday party in the Netherlands, you bring your own cake. They don't buy it for you. I mean, silly story. But anyway, there are just things that you need to understand, which has helped me bring it into the boardroom. And even recently, the nonprofit that I support, we added 8 new board members and a new executive director, and had the opportunity to really look at the diversity. And do we have legal counsel? Do we have strength in HR? What else do we need? Do we have business people who have big Fortune 500 experience? Do we have some people who have built their own businesses? And to really make sure that we service the community at large, you need to have a diverse board and a diverse management team leading it. We were fortunate. Our leader, Marilyn Pink, came from telehealth and her previous company. So during the pandemic. Obviously, the breast cancer clinic and the rehab that we do at Turning Point had to close for a bit, but we were able to pivot quickly to online. You were just saying you had a doctor's appointment online recently. Zoom. It's our world. So I think the diversity of people and personalities on your team really help lift your organization so that you can weather the storm, like the pandemic one we've just had, having individuals who have years of experience and have gotten us through 9/11 or whatever the last disaster was, or God forbid the future will be. We need to ensure that the diversity makes us stronger as a group.
Setting you up for success. You mentioned several times, and I don't want to let the hour go by without elaborating a little bit. You participate and you give back in so many different ways, and some things that are near and dear to your heart. I want you to expand a little bit about your Salisbury University Shark Tank.
Love to.
And then also the Turning Point, because that's something that's very important. It's a breast cancer rehabilitation center?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so tell our listeners just a little bit about that initiative.
Sure. So Turning Point is about 16 years old, and it was founded by a physical therapist, Jill Binkley, and she herself got breast cancer and found that she wasn't able to access all the services that she felt she needed and education in order to be strong for herself and her family. And basically, Turning Point has grown into an organization that provides emotional counseling, nutritional counseling, Women on Wednesday, Zoom, workout exercises, educational forums, and really gives back to the community. We can see as many as 800 women a year and offer about 20% financial aid so that they can get back to the game of life. A mother who has breast cancer, most of our patients, it's amazing, are under the age of 40. Women are getting breast cancer younger and younger.
Earlier,
1 in 8 will get breast cancer. And in order not to have reoccurrence, it's been shown with all cancers that exercise and diet can make survival rates and the outcomes much, much stronger. So we have a big signature event called the Pink Affair, where we raise quite a bit of money and have a nice party. It'll be a virtual one this year.
When is that?
It's March 6th. I hope I have the date right. And it's myturningpoint.org if anyone would like to donate or learn more about it. But it's a wonderful kind of backyard born Atlanta organization that's now going national. We've attracted a lot of attention with telehealth and Zoom during the pandemic, actually. So people from all over the country and even all over the world are starting to take notice of Turning Point and the efforts that we've got there.
That's exciting. And you know that lends an interesting turn, because previously it would have been held in person or hosted in person, therefore limiting people by geography unless they were planning to, travel in. But now that it's online, anybody can attend. It's limitless.
That's right.
That's very exciting.
We had a socials disparity conference where we had medical professionals come together and talk about the people of color and the rural communities and why they index higher for things like breast cancer and what we can do as a medical community to shift the conversation. And there'll be some future ones coming up in the new year as well.
Congratulations to you and your efforts. Tell me how the bra ties in, because I read that as well. So the fabric that you were talking about that is used for medical. You said something with a bra.
Yes, there are many brands out there that make fabulous bras for breast cancer patients. There's a company called Amona. They actually make the prosthetic that would go into the bra, and they make breast cancer bras. Morena makes breast cancer bras, and that's kind of where I was previously. And yes, I had the opportunity to work on a patented bra that we did that basically had a drain bulb management on the side so that you can put the tube through it. I mean, unless you've been through any kind of surgery, you don't imagine what happens to the body. Women can't sleep at night. They kind of have to sit up in a chair. And this allowed the woman to kind of turn over and roll over at night and move this drain bulb from one location to another part of her body.
May I ask, and we didn't cover this pre-show, you're so personally involved in this mission. Did you have a family member that suffered from breast cancer?
Well, it's pretty ironic. My cousin Robin got breast cancer, and then throughout my last 4 years being associated with Turning Point, several of my other cousins, my best friend, my childhood friend got it, and even my mom at 80 got breast cancer last year. Yeah, so she even came to visit at the end of her treatment and stayed with us during the pandemic. So I've had a lot of firsthand experience with friends and family, as many people have, and you understand what happens when there's a breakdown of the mother in the family because she can't do all those activities. It impacts the work. It impacts the children. It impacts her community activities, her ability to give back. Yeah, and it's very, it's intimate. It's very emotional experience. So I'm just delighted that an organization like Turning Point can make a difference.
Well, I can see that there was a lot of passion in the development of that. So I'm thankful that your genius brain was able to create something like that so that all the ladies that have suffered out there can find some relief in something as simple as an undergarment. Shifting gears to the exciting Shark Tank endeavor that you have. I love Shark Tanks. I'm very familiar with the format. I'm very familiar with all the success that derives from it. So you mentioned that it was kind of a feeder. Expand on that.
So I went to school at Salisbury University.
Where you graduated from,
where I
correct?
graduated. The Purdue School of Business, Frank Purdue, remember the chicken guy, you see him on TV. Well, the Purdue School of Business sponsors what's called the Shore Hatchery. And it is a competition that is just like Shark Tank you see on TV. And over the years, Shark Tank has actually leveraged and used some of our participants and have ended up on the show.
Wow.
So basically, it's a pitch where we have a format and students from all over the Mid-Atlantic come and they have their 1 minute elevator pitch. They put their business plan together, and then the process is there are funds, $250,000.
Is this real money or?
Oh
is this
yeah,
planning?
no.
Wow.
This is real money. Over, I would say the last seven years, there've been $2 million
From Mr. Purdue.
It's from actually the Radcliffe Foundation, which is a foundation, and as I said in the beginning, capital C collaborative.
Yes, I read
This is a great example of community, business, foundation, and school coming together to really incubate innovation and development on the Eastern Shore in Maryland. Wow. A lot of people, they're raised on the shore and then they leave. There's an initiative to get people to come back and live on the shore. I mean, it's a beautiful place.
Right.
I actually have a place there in Fenwick Island where I go back. It's kind of my rubber band that snaps me back every summer, and I've been involved on the board of the school. And this competition, everything from retail to medical, food products, it's really been amazing. And to see these young entrepreneurial minds and then the amazing community of business people and the hatchery board and the advisory board at Salisbury University, the Purdue School, they all participate. The last two have been Zoom calls, so to see all of this happen online was pretty amazing.
Do they bring their products too, or is it just the conception and the plan? So they have product and everything. They've already developed it.
The way it works, like it's usually a hall room walking when they could set up their booths like you would at a trade show. So we try to give the students and the individuals the experience of what it would be like if they're pitching it at a trade show. And then there's a mentoring program where I've mentored, and so if some of my associates, many of these individuals through their process. One woman now was working on her FDA approval. There's another gentleman working on his product for FDA approval. I can't say it because some of it.
Yeah.
But it's exciting, and to have conversations and follow up, and they're so innovative and passionate about what they're doing. And in a time where, dollars and funds are tight, We hear that 20% of nonprofits might not make it. A lot of entrepreneurs can't find the money that they did. So to give back to the communities to make them stronger and better than before.
It's a great investment.
Yes, the whole community of Salisbury has been transformed because of the people that I just mentioned in those organizations. When I went to school there, there wasn't a whole lot happening in Salisbury. We just stayed on campus, and now the whole place is humming. It's really, it's very, very exciting.
I bet it will be so awesome when you're sitting on your couch enjoying a cup of tea 5 years from now and you see on TV or of one of these youngsters that you saw go through this program who are flying successfully because we're using their invention or their creation every single day. And you knew where it all started.
Yes.
That will be exciting.
Very, very exciting.
I have to ask just because it's raining in my mind, okay, because you said Purdue and he's the chicken fella, and then it's called Stone Hatchery, and hatchery kind of like...
Shore hatchery.
Shore, excuse me. Like eggs?
Eggs,
like little eggs
like
hatching?
checking.
Okay.
That's the whole idea.
That's what I was thinking.
That's the
Okay.
incubator idea. Yeah.
Cute. Shore hatchery. Well, again, you've participated and given back so many different ways. I think it's very important for a woman of your success and acumen to be able to reach back and help others. You mentioned mentorship, and you mentioned that you participate as a mentor. I might be giving you a call for some advice one day. Who has been a mentor to you throughout your road to success or throughout a turbulent time? Who is somebody that has impacted you so greatly, aside from maybe your spouse or your parents? Somebody that kind of helped mold you into the woman that you are today?
Well, one of the first people that comes to mind is Lindsay Webb, and I've worked for him. He's the one that talked me into moving to Asia and changing my whole life and my whole world. I will never forget George Porter, who was another great gentleman who mentored and moved me from sales into merchandising and product development. But he said, you just have to go talk to Lindsay. You don't have to take the job. They just, your name came up, so you can't, disrespect them. You need to go take this interview. I'm like, okay, fine. So I talked to my husband about it, and he's like, yeah, it'd be cool. Let's go to New Zealand. And I thought, oh, I'm not going to New Zealand. No way. So I went and I talked to him. The next thing I knew, I'm packing my bag and on a plane.
To New Zealand.
So what in that mentor, somebody who was compassionate, who really cared about the individual. He always focused on accentuating the positive. We both knew what I needed help with and I wasn't good at, and he sponsored and made sure I got that help. And in terms of really understanding, obviously I became a new mom under his leadership, so that was a real milestone for me personally. And I had never had such a senior role in an executive company, and then all of a sudden having a child at the same time.
Juggling them both.
Exactly, and I traveled. We set up a product development center in Japan. We had a marketing we moved the Asia office from San Francisco to Singapore. So it was a really interesting time. And then I would say later in my life, other mentors at Liz Claiborne, people like Paul Sharon, he was CEO, and to watch how he really cultivated his women leadership. I think we were the company with the most senior vice presidents and presidents who were women.
Wow.
We were making women's clothing, so maybe that made sense. But he really ensured that there were classes and sending people to the Center for Creative Leadership and empowerment and a conversation on diversity. And then when we brought in all of these new entrepreneurial brands, these incubator type brands, we were talking into the big mothership of Liz to really understand that you can't Lizify all of them. You need to let them be on their own, and that's a different kind of diversity. And then the business is very solid because you don't know what kind of clothing the consumer is going to want.
Right.
It's like your stock portfolio. They wouldn't say, "Oh, invest all your money in technology." No, you want to have
a little there.
Exactly. So I think inside of an apparel company, you want the same kind of diversity in consumer attitudes. And learning that and learning about the leadership and what happened during 9/11, being in New York City, and it was really scary. And we had international, it was Market Week, and we had international customers in from around the world, and the kind of courageous leadership that, just steadfast and strong. I got to go home at the end of the day, but they really wanted us to stay in the building and help manage the people and, fight or flight. Well, your first instinct is, I want to get out of here.
Yeah.
But you need to be resilient and think about hunker down. And phone calls were coming in from all over the world to our desk. Where's my family? Where's so-and-so? And all the phone systems had gone down. Wow. So just a really interesting, very, very fortunate. And, you said don't say parents, but my father has always been my unbelievable mentor. And I think losing him years ago, I always feel I have a hole in my heart to this day for that. And maybe I'm trying to be as good a mentor to everybody else as he was to me.
I'm sure he's smiling down on you now.
I would hope so. He always said, just make a decision. You think about it too much. Just nothing to it. Just go do it. Because I'd be pros and cons.
I
and
do
sheets
the same thing.
And lists. And he's like, oh my gosh, he was amazing. He was a non-tech guy. He'd always have one piece of paper in his money clip, and it would say $1 million this year, or whatever his goal was. And I'd go. I remember even as a child up to his dresser to kind of take my lunch money, and he'd always have a message or two in his money clip, and that was his way of staying focused and his goal in his way.
That's exciting. I see a lot of those. You mentioned some of the things that you learned throughout your mentors, and I've noticed in conversation your leadership style translates a lot of those things. So you've been able to kind of incorporate the things that impacted you and that you've learned. As people are looking to kind of surmount obstacles in order to achieve success. I mean, you have such a robust portfolio, and we haven't even touched on your world travels or your spouse and motherhood, and we'll get to that in just a second. As far as remaining sane, juggling all the things that you have to do internationally, family-wise, now here in Gwinnett and Atlanta, what do you do to keep yourself balanced? It could be physically, just mentally. What do you do for Pat? What does Pat do in order to remain 100% for all the avenues that you have to give to daily?
Depending on the season, I love to swim in the summer and take long walks, with the weather being the way it is now. But I think you have to take care of yourself first. And sometimes it's hard because you want to make sure, my mom is doing okay. My son is a recent college graduate. Finding a job during a pandemic wasn't easy. My husband decided after 25 years of staying at home, he was going to go back to work now that, I had a career that was settled in a particular location. So I wanted to worry about all of them, but truthfully, I really have to look in the mirror. And by taking care of myself, my health, my mindset, and to stay very positive, but then recognize that sometimes you're going to have difficult days. So I like to walk the talk and be that role model. Read a book. I'm always reading something. I think, what was it called? Atomic Habits was one of the books, the newer ones I read. One of my favorite is one of the Jack Welch books that's from years ago, having lived in Fairfield County. Really admired some of the discipline and the reinvention of the company and the business model. These are the things that I'm trying to reinvent myself, even my consulting practice. Mm-hmm. So I'm reaching out and working with other groups. So it's not just Pat Royak.
Right.
And I'm finding that what's happening through that, this incubator idea has just really bubbled up, mm-hmm. because there are a lot of companies who want to be born. There's a lot of money out there, actually. In the private equity world, it's pent up. They want to invest in businesses. And so by broadening my network, ensuring that I'm giving back, involved with a wonderful organization here called Kettering, mm-hmm. Which are business executives, where they sponsor a group called Year Up. And we've talked about mm-hmm. mentoring. They have educational courses for executives, C-suite, mm-hmm. people who have backgrounds similar to mine, mm-hmm. a group of men and women, very diverse. It's a nonprofit, and it was born out of people who were in job transition and wanted to come together and kind of give back to the community. So when I think of how do I get myself ready for the day and living in the world we have today, it's really looking outward and ensuring that I'm growing and learning and reading and listening. I have to say I had to really pull back from being a news junkie like all of us did with everything going on.
It'll plague your mind.
Yeah, and I found a remarkable shift and a healthier perspective with me pulling the information I needed to read and digest rather just than allowing it to come at me. Listening to great shows like yours.
Yay, thank
but
you.
It broadens your mind, and you think of, and you don't have to feel like you're the only person going through the things that we're going through. It's not easy right now for business.
Not at all.
And I lived in New York for over 2 decades of my career, living and working, and it's heartbreaking what I see happening. My friends are texting, "Oh, I can't go out to dinner. I can't do this."
Yeah.
They're moving out, and so want to be part of the positive change and exciting things happening. And Gwinnett County, wow! I mean, the amount of international business that's done right here in Gwinnett County with many businesses.
Remarkable.
It is very, very exciting.
And manufacturing as well.
Manufacturing is
big
coming
hub,
back to the U.S. with a roar, and I'm thrilled to see that. And the products, I was talking earlier about the company I was with, Marina, they're all manufactured in the United States. So I love seeing things like that.
Yes, that's very exciting. Okay, so just to give our listeners a little bit of an idea, Pat is a world traveler for work and personal, I guess you could say, as well. So she mentioned that she lived in New Zealand and Singapore, and you mentioned, did you mention?
Netherlands.
The Netherlands, yeah, and New York and all over the United States. Out of all those places, what was your favorite cultural experience to live and to experience there? For maybe the food and all the things, because I'm thinking I have no idea what it's like in New Zealand, but Singapore I think would be very interesting. So give a little bit of an insight to where was your favorite place to reside and maybe one of the favorite things that you did there.
Well, it's hard to just pick one, and I think I've talked a lot about New Zealand, and it's definitely my Camelot. But I would say being a new mom in Asia was extraordinarily wonderful. They love children in Asia, and it didn't matter where you were going, Singapore airline or walking in a mall, people would always come over and talk to you. The stewardess on the airline, they'd want to hold our son during the whole time and say, "Hey, why don't you guys go to sleep?" There's something about celebrating children,
new life,
and new life that was very, very impressive there. I think being in the Netherlands, it was life-changing and transformational. I think for my son, he went to the British school there.
Wow.
And wow, what a great experience. And I watched him go from kind of a shy, quiet young man to, a typical...
He evolved.
Yes,
Yeah.
he definitely evolved. And I think my husband just loved riding his bike up on the hills, and it was just a wonderful family opportunity to live life a little bit different than we did with my 5 o'clock in the morning up on that train into New York City for 16 years, 2 hours a day, going in and coming out, but you do it. And it was easier to have those family dinners around the table, which are important to us, a couple times a week, no matter what's going on.
I'm sure with your schedule, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, have to have a lot of structure. So, I mean, I guess I can't say there's just one.
Okay,
but I did
Wasn't
enjoy
a fair
living
question.
I did enjoy living in Europe and being able to travel to different places.
I think that probably, I know you mentioned before the show your son's 25?
Yes,
in his 20s?
yes.
I can imagine he's a very well-rounded young man, having lived and experienced so many different cultures at such an early age. We are very privileged, I'll say it, as Americans here. And if you haven't had the chance to travel outside of our country, I implore you to do so you can see just how fortunate we are here in the United States. Not to say that it's bad everywhere else, but it's just very different. So I can only imagine how that is able to translate to the human that he is today, or maybe in the workplace and so on and so forth?
Well, it's funny you say that because, he was like a lot of kids looking for that best job. And he ended up identifying with a retail store that actually is from Germany. Lidl, and he had remembered attending, and shopping in that store when he was back in the Netherlands, which isn't something that would have necessarily been on my radar, but he's a marketer, and he kind of pivoted to an interest in supply chain during this crazy time. You can't find toilet paper and paper towels. He's like, well, wait a minute, maybe they need help over here. Yeah. So he's pivoting like everybody, but seems to be enjoying it. So I think, I don't know if he didn't have that kind of experience, if he would have been as open-minded to take a look at working for a non-American company. As a kid, coming right out of school, it might not have been a first choice, and maybe something like that opened his mind.
Very exciting. Well, I do just want to say cheers to all of the things that you've accomplished. As we were rounding the end of the show, is there anything that you would like to share specifically with our listeners that you want them to carry on with them beyond this conversation? And I don't mean to put you in the hot seat if you need a minute to think about it.
No, that's fine. I think it kind of gets back to where we started in the beginning, that as we're all coming out of this pandemic, and I don't want to overly focus on it, that we do need to reach out and collaborate with others and reimagine the businesses we're in, the way we spend our time, even how we celebrate our holidays coming up. And really, I am a glass half full kind of person.
I see that.
But it's important to recognize that maybe not everybody is feeling that way, or not all businesses are, and that we really take a look at even women-owned businesses. I think it's really been difficult for them. 20% of women, I don't know if I've mentioned it yet, have left the workforce because of the pandemic. Women who have children under the age of 2, about 40% have left the workforce. This is going to take us back several decades. So I think it's really important that all of us, everyone, not just women, men and women, take care of our own self, our health. We put off going to the doctors, maybe mental health issues that are going to emerge from all of this. And just with a capital C, care more, collaborate, and really give back to those businesses. 20% of the nonprofits may not be here, and they're the ones that dig into our communities and give back.
Absolutely.
So people have bank accounts are fuller now. A lot of people have been saving money, those who haven't lost their jobs. So I think it's going to be an interesting time. And I encourage everybody to lean in during the holidays and give those gifts.
Exactly.
And go shopping.
I did just want to say that, you said that you're new here kind of to Gwinnett, but not really. And I know that you mentioned networking and the power of, your network and expanding, so on and so forth. What types of networking groups, outside of the ones that are geared towards your industry, just maybe for the professionals out there in this area, would you recommend participating in, or do you participate in? You mentioned the chamber, and I am one of the biggest advocates for our great Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce. They provide so many resources. What other groups would you suggest that someone get involved in, or what other types of groups? Are you like in Rotary? Do you do business alliances? Where would someone maybe find some fruit in networking?
Well, I mentioned Kettering, and that is a kind of C-suite focused organization of executives and continuing education and giving back. I think it's fantastic. There's the American Association of Footwear and Apparel, which is based in New York. It's an organization that really helps deal with issues such as the supply chain, which has been so challenging during this time period. Next Generation Manufacturing, which is how I met Lisa, is a group of women-led manufacturing companies here in Georgia. There are also General Manufacturing. Regina Maddox runs that group and does a terrific job holding seminars and online tours It's been fantastic. Yes, they did a tour of Starbucks facility and others. So I think that's a great organization to know. There's always the Association of Marketing Professionals, and I agree that the American Chamber of Commerce is a fabulous organization. As a matter of fact, my husband worked for them in New Zealand and was part of the membership.
I'll have to check that out. I've never heard of the American Chamber of Commerce. I'll have to give that a Google.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for giving. As you see, I've taken lots of notes. I can't wait to do a little bit of research myself. I do just want to give another shout out to Lisa Winton for connecting us.
Yes.
What a wonderful and delightful conversation that we've had. And again, to Terry, who makes this series possible. One of the nonprofits that are near and dear to Terry's heart is called Cat Rangers. And here's a little info on Cat Rangers.
Cat Rangers is saving lives of cats and kittens one paw at a time. They are the special forces of cat rescue, and all of their felines recover in their lovely home-like center in Beaufort while they wait to find their forever homes. Cat Rangers is growing rapidly and is always seeking financial and volunteer support. Please contribute by visiting catrangers.org today.
So I know that I asked you before the show if you had any animals, and you mentioned that you had a dog. I'm also a dog person. But if ever you just want to visit a little cat without having to take it home, you can go to Cat Rangers in Beaufort and just hang out with the kitties. I always have to plug that because Terry loves the cats. So before we say bye-bye, Pat, is there anything else that you would like to leave our audience with, or me personally, as we've had this wonderful conversation? I wish you the very best for the holidays. I know it's going to be exciting and different, but I hope that you have a good time with your family, and the floor is yours.
Well, I would just say that what I see happening in the future, really, in the fashion, apparel industry, and consumer world, is businesses are really going to have to take care of their employees in new and different ways, and giving back, whether it's sustainable products or socially responsible. I think our perspective needs to really change, and I think we need to collaborate and consider reimagining our products a little bit differently in order to really connect with those consumers who are probably more open-minded now than ever before. So you really need to go back and check your brand stories, your strategies, and how you're going to communicate across that whole omni-channel of different vehicles that consumers are using, mobile, desktop, or in store.
Or other. I love the word omni-channel. Now I do want to just give you the chance, if anybody wanted to learn more about Royak Consulting or possibly get in touch with you to have a conversation or buy you a coffee, is there any way that anybody can find that out?
Best way to find me is on LinkedIn at Patricia J. Royak.
And she has a really, really sweet profile, guys. Go and check it out. Although I'm not going to lie, my request is still pending, Pat.
Oh, my goodness.
Tell your virtual assistant to accept that for me.
I will do that. I have a sister-in-law with the same name, so that is a fun fact.
You know what? That might be
That's what it is.
Because I was like, why does she have blonde hair?
Yeah, it's the Royak group.
And it's her that I found.
So I don't mind giving my sister-in-law's business a plug either. She's technology, high tech, high touch.
Well, then I need to find you because I was looking before, I was like,
all the time.
Why hasn't she accepted me yet? And I was like, why is her hair blonde? But it's so nice and red when I see you in person. And for those of you that can't see Pat, she's so beautiful. And she mentioned her heritage being Italian and Irish. And she is super sassy with the red hair and just wonderful and enjoyable to be with. So on that note, I've given a visual to our listeners. Pat, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I can't wait to continue this conversation sometime and pick your brain about manufacturing. Until then, to all of our listeners, if this was your first time, thank you for joining us. If you're returning, thank you for subscribing. And remember that you can listen to all of our broadcasts every Friday at 11 a.m. We are live. Check out businessradiox.com so you can see our archived episodes. We are online 24/7. You can find us on iTunes, iHeartRadio, etc. Connect with us on social media at Gwinnett RadioX. And until next time, I am Amanda Pierce, and this has been Celebrating Powerhouse Women on Business RadioX.